Okay, let's talk about the envelopes. First, let's hit EG2, which is the amp envelope. It has a trigger switch, which allows you to define how it is triggered. If you have it set to MIDI, like I currently do now, it is triggered by the MIDI keys that I'm playing. They're sending the MIDI. They're triggered via MIDI. All right, so that's what's currently happening. And of course, we have control over the attack. The decay and release is one knob. So this is an ADS envelope, and sustain is controlled with a single knob too. So they're very punchy. And of course, you have all of the traditional effects established with an envelope. The ADS architecture, having an envelope set up this way, creates unique envelopes. It does not sound like an ADSR or an AR. So it's kind of a design choice, and it has specific outcomes that you're hearing. Has quite an attack time. You can get some, I can't predict it as well as I can predict what will happen with an ADSR, but it leads to creative outcomes for sure. So yeah, that is EG2's general sound as far as the amp is concerned, because that is what it is hardwired to control, is the amplifier. We've been triggering it via MIDI, but of course you can trigger it. You can set it to the middle setting, which then activates the input. So you can have some other external gate source triggering this envelope. It doesn't have to be something you're playing with your hands. For example, let's just demonstrate. I'll run it. Now the LFO is providing a gate to trigger EG2. So, and of course, you could be triggering it from some other device that has some sort of pulse output, including modular equipment or whatever. I don't know this for sure, and I don't have anything set up, but I bet if you had a pulse coming out of even a drum machine, it would trigger it. All right, we also have the ability to set this switch to PATT, which stands for Patternator, and then the Patternator will trigger the envelope. So we will demonstrate that once we're working with the Patternator. And now on to the filter envelope, EG1, which controls the filter instead of the amp. And of course, you can trigger these things independently from independent sources. So they're not necessarily just the hardwired connection to the amp and the filter, or to the triggering that comes from the keyboard. We have outputs. We have 2 outputs per envelope, which is probably more than you would ever use in this system itself, directing envelopes elsewhere. It's hard to say. You might, I don't know. But you do, and you could certainly use it to control Eurorack or whatever else you need as an envelope source. So as The filter control, EG1, is turned on, of course, by this EG1 knob in the filter. We don't have any sound at all because I've turned off the triggering. So yes, and it operates in the same fashion as EG2, except for it is hardwired to the filter, but it doesn't have to go to the filter. If you want, for example, we can direct it like I've demonstrated to control the frequency of VCO2, and we can have sync. It's up to you. So, and also it can be triggered. I could do a thing like this where I take the output of VCO3 and plug it into the gate input and set it to the center position. I could do that with both of these, and then I could be having each one independently activated. You can hear EG1 being triggered. You can hear EG2 being triggered by the LFO. And you can hear the EG1 being triggered, controlling the filter cutoff by VCO3 acting as an LFO. So yeah. Independent triggering. So that's fun. And of course, you can also trigger EG1 with the Patternator, and you do so using this switch. And so each of them also has a different output, as we said. So there's only one thing left to point out. You can also trigger EG2 using the LFO without doing a patch, and that's via this LFO retrigger button. If I just play a note, the EG2 does its thing. But if I turn on LFO retrigger, as I hold the note, it will retrigger the envelope over and over again according to the speed of the LFO. Actually, both EGs, not just EG2. And in certain sequencing functions, that is very useful. All right, so those are the envelope generators. See, punchy, I told you.